what? You ought to join the Peace Corps. Remember, a lot of people used to say that. Are they saying it today? We'll find out and more.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
It is a pleasure to have you aboard. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Friday edition of Dan York State of Mind, as you've probably come accustomed to if you've been watching for any length of time. And if you're a new viewer, let me advise you that on Fridays we kind of skip the rundown of the issues. There's always another day that we can tackle the world, but on Fridays we kind of settle in and talk about a theme or discuss a theme or have a debate or get into something on a little bit more of an intimate basis. And tonight we're going to do that with the Peace Corps. You know, I have to admit that I don't know a lot about the Peace Corps. I think we all know what the Peace Corps is, we think, and it'd be nice to revisit. And we had this headline pop up this week in the Providence Journal, and Lexi, my esteemed producer, Lexi Chris, read this and said, you know, we got to meet these guys. URI program prepares students for Peace Corps. And so we're going to dig into it. And our first guest is the guy that kind of runs the whole ship at URI, Dr. Michael Rice, Professor of Fisheries and Aquaculture. Right. Not agriculture.
Aquaculture.
Aquaculture.
Farming of fish and shellfish.
Farming fish, shellfish, and a former state representative you is.
Yes, that is correct. I used to be in the State House representing District 35, South Kingstown.
Did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it immensely.
Do you miss it?
I miss it somewhat.
You were unelected in a coup against you, yes?
Yes, indeed. I was in the 2010 primaries. There were 7 of us who ran afoul of the labor movement, who did not like our stand on cost of living increases.
Pensions and stuff.
That is correct.
And you're a Democrat.
I am.
Oh my gosh.
I am.
Must be tough to be you.
I am quite the leftist.
Well, you know, you're quite the leftist?
I am.
Oh my goodness. I don't know where we're going to go with this show. Why don't we get off the politics for your benefit and mine?
That is correct.
You've been at URI for how long?
I've been at URI almost 29 years now.
Really?
Yes. I began in October '87, and actually it was my Peace Corps experience that brought me to Rhode Island. My Peace Corps training was at the University of Rhode Island. I was in training at the University of Rhode Island, largely as a training prior to going to the Philippines. And I spent 10 weeks at the University of Rhode Island. One of the things here, my picture is you're showing here.
Yeah. Explain that one. Well, we've got a series of them, and you're going to have to catch up. But go
okay. The first one was my training group at the University of Rhode Island, became a professor. And then once I went to the Philippines, I made a number of professional friends there. And now, as a professor at the University of Rhode Island, I take students to the Philippines to work where I was a Peace Corps volunteer with the Philippine Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, where they have a rather large training center in fisheries and aquaculture. And my students at the University of Rhode Island get training in tropical aquaculture with my former colleagues when I was a Peace Corps.
That's got to be rewarding.
Extremely rewarding. It's basically bringing the international connections directly to Rhode Island, basically building our strengths in fisheries here in Rhode Island. We are really renowned for our fisheries, and building on the strengths of the Philippines, where they actually do a lot of farming of fish, and they do a lot of fish. So basically the partnership is extremely strong.
Define the Peace Corps for me.
Well, the Peace Corps basically goes back to 1961 during the Kennedy administration, where he basically went to a number of college students and says, "Do you wish to really serve the world?" And a lot of college students answered the call. You are stationed in foreign countries very frequently as the host of the foreign countries. Often stationed with the foreign non-governmental agencies or the host government themselves, and charged with a number of activities. My particular one happened to be in fisheries and aquaculture, and I was with the Philippine Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, the equivalent of our National Marine Fisheries Service. So it is it was a very, very
You go, you study, you
volunteer,
you weave yourself into the fabric,
of
the community and the country.
You learn the language. You learn the culture of the company, and basically
You don't get paid.
Well, you have a living allowance. And that living allowance actually is on the level of your counterpart in the country. You're not starving to death over there as a volunteer, but then you're not making a load of money either.
You do that, but what's your responsibility as a Peace Corps participant?
As a Peace Corps volunteer, essentially you are working essentially as an intern in terms of your host agency abroad. Oftentimes it's with an international NGO. As I say, it's often with the host government agency at the request and partnership of the U.S. government. It is a very, very delightful program. When you get back, you have what is called a readjustment allowance. During my time, I don't know what it is now, but it was like $2,000 a month that they basically pay into an account, and that's given to you. It's called a readjustment allowance.
They being the federal government?
Basically, the Peace Corps government.
Peace Corps government.
The Peace Corps as the
Peace Corps
office.
The Peace Corps is funded by
the U.S. government.
Okay. How big's the program?
Well, let's see. Neil Ross, my colleague, who you'll meet in a few minutes here, was saying that there's about 210,000 students that have Peace Corps volunteers that have become students that have become Peace Corps volunteers over the time, and there's about 7,200 right now.
Wow. All right, why don't we do this? That was a good segue. When we come back, you'll meet one of the originals. Stay with us.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Without a doubt, the most famous line ever delivered by a president in an inaugural address or anywhere, no doubt. And Professor Rice, I mean, you invoked the president as an explanation of really the start of the Peace Corps, started in his administration, correct?
That is correct.
We continue with our conversation about Peace Corps and URI's incredible work with it. With Neil Ross is a volunteer with the URI Peace Corps, an original, yes? Like
yes, sir.
The number one, the first?
I believe I was the first university graduate to go into the Peace Corps in 1962.
Holy moly.
The first volunteers actually went overseas into other countries in '62, but some of them started training in 1961. And that speech by Kennedy was what motivated me.
Was it?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
I watched him live and being inaugurated.
I watched him live too. I was one. I know exactly where I was. No, I don't.
I was a senior at
don't know where I
URI,
was.
and
You were?
yeah.
All right, you've given away all the data now that we know. Now that we know. Well, you look pretty good for having been a senior back when the president made that speech.
Hey, living overseas makes you young all your
well,
life.
you know what? You prior to the show, you were telling me about how profound this life experience is and what it does, not only for you as a student or a graduate, but what it does for the countries that you participate in and what your employable options are and the status that you bring. Having that out-of-country experience, which is, priceless in so many ways, correct?
Changed my life, and I think Mike would agree with that. I think, well, he said that. All of us, we come back different than we are.
Yeah. come back differently because?
Because
and by the way, you guys share this experience together, chat with each other.
We've had a global experience. For most of us, it's the first time we've ever gone and lived in another country. I was in a mountain valley in the Dominican Republic.
Okay.
A small, about 3,000 village.
In fact, we've got some pictures. I know you're frustrated because we've got pictures on a video rolling.
That's my group.
That's your group.
Kneeling down. I was in Venezuela. I started working with the Boy Scouts in the Dominican Republic, and I actually led a delegation to Venezuela for international jamboree. And I also have a program of bringing international exchange program now, since 1999, bringing scouts from other countries to the United States to work at Boy Scout camps. I don't know if are you from Rhode Island? Or?
Well, I'm a Jersey guy. It's the same thing.
Well, we got a Camp Yago, which is one of the bigger camps in the country.
Well, I've been here enough to know where Camp Yago is.
All right.
Yes, I'm enough of a Rhode Island guy to get that.
But since 1999, we've had international staff for the first time from the Dominican Republic every year since. Mm-hmm. And that's one of my my programs.
So, talk to me about, first of all, URI in general, and I know Dr. Dooley has really tried to advance this discussion. There's two things I want to say about URI, and I say it perpetually and all the time. First of all, it's a jewel here in Rhode Island that I think Rhode Islanders underestimate. Nationally and internationally, more people recognize URI for what it has done, accomplished over the decades, never mind what it's doing now, than people who live next door to it even get. You agree?
I do.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, many of our students are, particularly in Southeast Asia, where I'm familiar, in Indonesia and the Philippines, are former students that have basically come through the program and are actually high level officials within their particular government.
Yeah, no doubt about that. The other thing is that while there's been an international presence from URI to the world for a long time, this administration's really trying to accelerate that. I mean, in a big time way, right?
That is very, very true, and it basically shows up in the academic plan of the university, and it's a lot of resources are put into this. They have expanded what they call the J-term program, in which the students can have a choice of several countries to study abroad. There was just this last year the first J-term course to Cuba. I take my students a J-term course to the Philippines, and there's others off to Europe and Indonesia as well.
And the cool thing about doing that with you, it's probably a whole heck of a lot more affordable than what is the now new fashionable internship program, where student and or mommy or daddy has to write a check of right to be able to, right? Because the new thing is, I got to do a semester abroad. Well, maybe you don't. Maybe you can graduate, and take a couple of years in the Peace Corps and really go.
Oh yes, for particularly of students that don't particularly have a lot of money or come from more modest means, the Peace Corps, our Peace Corps prep program, one of the motivations is providing a pathway for students to study a language here at URI, take some skills type courses so that they can credibly work abroad, and this puts them as a leg up in terms of being selected for the Peace Corps. And the Peace Corps is a good way to get 2 years of experience.
What kind of kid wants to join the Peace Corps?
Oh, that's a tough one, because there's a wide variety of them. But
what kind of kid were you?
I was kind of I was very active in social programs, academic programs, and trade programs, things of that nature.
Okay, so this made sense to you.
I like people. I converse easily with people and so forth. And
so that's always been your thing.
Yeah, and when the Peace Corps invited me to go to the Dominican Republic, I had no idea where it was in the world. I said, "Is that in South America?" No.
Got some nice golf courses there, Neil.
Yeah, well, now they do. They didn't then.
Right.
Those were all sugarcane fields when I was there.
Really?
Yeah, with the
Teeth of the Dog, the world famous golf course, was a sugarcane field. Probably was, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Casa de Campo, all of that area.
Okay.
And so, it's not. It's a little different today, but.
So what happens? What kind of young person decides that they want to join the Peace Corps? Is there a way to define them? Is there a common thread?
Well, I think there are several common threads. I think one is that many of us are tired of being in classes. We've been in classes continually since kindergarten, and we need a break. We need to kind of retool, rethink, take some time off, and it's a great way to do it if you're willing to be challenged. Peace Corps is not easy. No matter how well organized the Peace Corps may be today, you're still in a village and you may be the only American there. And you're not speaking the language so well, so the challenge is really to get to know the community, to listen, to learn the language, so that you can communicate and then start to innovate some programs. In my case, it took me 9 months before I became fluent enough in Spanish to say whatever I wanted to say and be understood, and they could say whatever they wanted to say at their rate of speed, and I got about 90% of it.
And how long were you there?
I was there for 2 years.
That's the normal stint, correct?
That's a normal stint. I was actually longer. I spent 3.5 years, which means that there was two extensions that I have beyond the 2 years. They extended for 1 year and then another 6 months, and that's an option. And then basically came home and went back to grad school. But I had some projects that were going on, and they basically saw that they were going well, and so they allowed me to stay the extra 1.5 years.
All right, listen, when we come back, I want to hear some stories from these guys about their Peace Corps experience. But I've got a question about the modern kid. It's the reason why I was probing Neil a little bit. Kids today are a little bit different. I never thought I'd be old enough to say that, but they are, and we're going to talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back in, Professor Rice and Neil Ross here talking about the Peace Corps at URI. By the way, how many schools around here have a Peace Corps operation? Is URI exclusive?
No, there's 4 schools in the New England region. How many nationally, Neil?
There's 39, and the others in there are 2 in Vermont, 1 in Connecticut, and URI.
You were telling me prior to the show that the Peace Corps at URI is symbiotic in terms of the university's original calling, correct?
Right.
Explain.
Okay, well, URI was the first place to be designated the Peace Corps Center in Rhode Island in 1961-62. And they helped me actually get into the Peace Corps. And so we have a long history with it. We did a training program that Mike was in Fisheries that went on for several years.
And the definition of the school, I mean, as an agricultural university.
Right, a land-grant, sea-grant university,
Right.
basically Moral Act University. This is part of our DNA.
Right.
Is largely sort of outreach to the community. That's part of the extension or cooperative extension function of the land-grant university. And in many ways, the Peace Corps brings the students into this and brings the extension philosophy across and globalizes it.
All right, so here's the question that I have, and this comes perhaps from my own neuroses as a parent of a junior in college. And our generation talks about this all the time. As parents now of adolescents, post-adolescent age, all my guys, class of '79, we're all in our mid-50s. And we talk about kids today. And what we laugh about is the way we left the house to go to college even. I said goodbye to my mom and dad. I didn't see them for 4 months. I called once a week maybe, and no big deal. So if I had decided that I wanted to jump ship and join the Peace Corps, I don't think they would have been unbothered by it or unmoved by it, but they would not have freaked out over it, right?
That is correct.
The kids today, and this generation of parents, I think, are guilty of the syndrome. We're on the phone with them, we're touching base, we're texting, we're communicating, we're always on them, we tend to micromanage them a little bit too much. Letting go is a whole big thing. You know what I'm talking about?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So does the modern parent have like a psychological disaster over letting their kid go, Peace Corps wise? Even though usually it's post-graduation, I get that, but it's still early 20s. I think we were more grown up back when I was growing up than we've allowed our kids to be. Reflection?
I know quite a few Peace Corps parents, the modern day Peace Corps
Okay.
parents.
Are they
And so-
coping?
Yeah, they're doing well because of the internet. There's a group that in Facebook for parents of Peace Corps volunteers, and they get in and they, oh, my son's leaving. You know, what am I going to do? And
Self-help
the other
group, I
parents-
get it, yes.
It is. It works.
Right, okay.
It works. Now, in terms of the
But
communication,
they need it.
They do need it. Well, it's a support group.
Our parents would be like, yeah, he's gone. He'll be back in a year, or 2 years, whatever.
Right,
You know?
right. Yeah. When I went to the University of San Francisco, basically. My parents living in Southern California, I got into the car. They said they packed up my car
See ya.
and sort of adios.
Right.
And
Good luck to you, pal.
That's right. And they never saw campus until graduation.
Right, but this is a different.
This is
so
different.
short answer, because I want to get to some of the philosophies on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Short answer. You've seen it all over the years.
Yes.
Yeah.
No big deal.
54 years.
Yeah. And-
No big deal.
and-
where the
and-
kids go and.
No,
not-
most people can handle
not
it
at all.
rather well.
In fact, yeah, the Peace Corps keeps tabs on all of the volunteers. And the experience is actually very, very enlightening.
You get to come home, or you're out. You're out 2 years. You're out. Bang.
It's 2 years, basically 2 years.
You can
you're
come
out there.
home for a visit.
Yeah.
Okay, now, when I was there, they said you can't go home to the United States. You join the Peace Corps to see the world, use your vacations to visit other countries.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah.
That made sense.
It probably did
Yeah.
make sense.
Today they go home, and there's one thing that I don't like about the Peace Corps today.
Uh-oh.
And I go to the Dominican Republic and I spend days with volunteers around the country, so I see what's happening, talk with them. Basically, they're kind of the same sort of people that we were, okay, in terms of their concerns and philosophy. But there's one big difference. Because of cell phones, Peace Corps gives them all cell phones so that they can get a hold of them in an emergency. If there's an earthquake, you know, where are you? Are you okay? And that's important. But many of them are talking to mom and dad every day.
Yeah, that was my point.
Yeah.
That was my point
So
in the whole thing.
they haven't really left home in some ways.
Right.
Right.
I was
okay.
sitting at
Well, it's
lunch-
going to have to be the modern Peace Corps. Listen, there's three concepts that you wanted to articulate about the Peace Corps. And I only have a minute, so do it quickly.
Okay. When Kennedy formed the Peace Corps, they created 3 goals for the Peace Corps. The first goal, of course, is to send Americans to other countries to provide whatever assistance, helping people to help themselves. That's the first goal. Second goal is to let people in other countries see a real American.
Right.
Get to know us. We're not the ones that are on
Good
the
marketing
newspaper.
for us.
Exactly. The third goal is to bring back that Peace Corps experience and to share that with other Americans. And that's kind of what Mike and I and most of us are doing in many ways around the world.
Right. And of course, final thought on this: when you do this, you've developed a skill and an asset, intangible and really beneficial for your career, no matter whether you come home or you grow it anywhere else.
Oh, absolutely. I basically credit the fact that I've been 29 years at the University of Rhode Island to the fact that my Peace Corps training was at the University of Rhode Island by the International Center for Marine Resource Development, which was in my college. They knew me when I basically applied, and it worked good for me.
Well, it seems to be working out terrifically, except for that one election.
Yeah, that is correct.
Professor, appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you, Neil.
You're welcome.
All right.
Anytime.
Peace Corps, URI. Do some homework on it. Good stuff. Final word when we get back. By the way, there's a whole Peace Corps prep program that you really need to understand and learn about. Go to the website, foxprovidence.com, and we'll link you right in so you understand what's going on with all of that. Good stuff, huh? All right, coming up on the Monday program, we're going to start talking to campaign chair people. I don't know how many will be left. Kasich on Monday night. See ya. Have a good weekend.